Greetings, Shaman King fans, and welcome back to the final episode of What's the Difference? This has been a fun passion project of mine, but all fun things must come to an end at some point. This series has been unique in the fact that not many series can go the same distance as this one, as even though the original anime separated quite some time ago, there were still similarities to be had. The course of the series was still very strong throughout, and it's fairly rare to have a scenario like this. Maybe I could do a similar series for Fruits Basket, but Full Metal Alchemist? No, the way Brotherhood adapts, too different. Hunter x Hunter? No, it's a little too accurate to a certain degree, and the original anime after the Greed Island OVAs stops a little too short. But Shaman King, it's just perfect. And knowing that there's a follow-up series after the new anime has come to its conclusion, I mean, what more could I really ask for? I get to continue watching the series somewhere down the line. And despite the ups and downs that the newer adaptation has had, it's still been a fun journey. There's an appreciation I've gained for both adaptation. They both have shortcomings. They both have amazing qualities that, unfortunately, if only we could have had something where we could just mash the two series together and you would have had something utterly phenomenal, and something I feel that some people could consider the greatest anime of all time. But what we got, I'm still appreciative for it. And so last time we got to see Hao's takeover of the Great Spirit, and now he possesses almost limitless power. But Yo and his friends still stand up to him regardless, with the only thing really managing to stand against Hao at this point is our hero's own willpower. And that's in every series. And so we enter this final phase. For the manga, especially the edition I'm reading from, it's volume 34, chapter 299. Oh, pretty much 300 chapters of content, geez. Titled Shaman King God End Part 3. For the original anime, it's episode 64, titled Epilogue. And for the newer anime's conclusion, it's episode 52, Shaman King God End. So let's jump in and see what's the difference. For the manga and newer anime, everyone is, well, in the Great Spirit, and they get to see Hao's new Oversoul. The Oversoul of the Shaman King manifested something that is an utter sight to behold. Oversoul, the Great Spirit. It's a wild look, and I love how Yo asks, it's just like, how is this even possible? We're inside the Great Spirit, but how do you make an Oversoul out of the Great Spirit? But Ren tells him, don't think about it too hard. This is a world of imagination, and this is also an intimidation tactic by Hao to shake their resolve. But Hao feels that he doesn't need intimidation. He has the power to back up his claims of destruction, where he manifests the very sun itself. Hao's power is the power of the stars, the universe, while the five great spirits, they're the power of Earth. Earth versus the universe. How small. I love that line being placed here because it's just like, it's everything coming full circle to a certain degree. Hao's catchphrase of how small or so tiny, and it's just like, of course a man with a god complex like that is just like, now I am the very universe itself, and you are but the lowly earth. How small are you? And then he uses solar flare, only for Ren to use his electric attacks to create a magnetic field to block the radiation. I don't know if that's scientifically possible, but anime shenanigans. Also power of imagination. So, you know. And of course, the newer anime leaves out some of the details and the explanations here and there, like Ren saying no human being could stand a chance against a flare's radiation, but the Earth's magnetic field is what protects us from solar flares at all times. And how it's just like, oh, okay, so you know your science, which feels weird for shamans to be so adept and knowledgeable about science as a whole, but I mean, hey, shamans of the modern age from 20 years ago, considering this takes place in like 2000, but how he's not done just yet. He sends out pillars of gas from the surface of the sun, solar prominence, and so we get a tag team with Horo and Chocolove in order to freeze the fire. Ice Age, Wind and Ice combo. But how uses that as gas and ice is what used to be harbingers of destruction. Ill omens is what we call a comet. And so how fires this off at them. But Lyserg uses the fiery destruction of a volcano in order to destroy the meteor. But it's a struggle. The Earth being pummeled by all these things all at once, they could hardly stand up to this. They need Yo, but Yo, he's not really sure what even the spirit of Earth can do. But Hao's not going to give him a chance to rest, and is ready to unleash a barrage upon them. A shower of meteors. Very much like a Final Fantasy RPG that rain down, and, well, Ren's magnetic field can only do so much against something like this. They need Yo. And the power of Earth? Earthquake? No. It's gotta be something massive. And as the spirit of lightning starts to be struck, Yo knows what he must do. The true power of the Earth itself. Gravity. Because, I mean, meteors are always caught within the Earth's gravitational pull all the time, and sometimes they're slung off course. But Hao's not done just yet. There's another trick up its sleeve. The ultimate final showing of a star. What happens when a star reaches its end? Of course, it's a supernova, which consumes everyone, but cue Elton John, cause they're still standing. Although a few of them are shirtless, like they've lost an outer top layer, like it's specifically Ren lost his shirt, Horo lost his headband and his little overcoat, Chocolove's fine, Lyserg lost his cloak, but that was about it. And it's funny too, because everyone's just like, man, it's probably a good thing we're not living beings right now, or we really would have been screwed. It's basically come down to a game of pretend with children being like, no, my power's stronger, no, my power's stronger. But how, seeing their spirits haven't been broken, is just like, okay, well then, if it's not the ultimate light that will give you pause and sink you into despair, how about the ultimate darkness that comes after a star collapses? The residual gravitational pull, the ultimate form, it's a black hole. As they all start to be pulled in, and with this, Hao thinks that, well, this will crush their very souls into nothing. But Yo's not giving up. He wants to use the Earth's gravity so that everyone will at least have a fighting chance. But Hao says the gravity of the Earth is nothing compared to a black hole. Everything will be pulled in. But they're not giving up. They still have the willpower to try. They have strong hearts and a belief that everything will work out, that it will all work out. And honestly, I think the anime did a fantastic job here, because in the manga, you mostly just see the various 5 different spirits, but I love the anime overlaying everyone on top of their spirit. It's a beautiful image, honestly. Like, it's a desperate last struggle by everyone, but they're giving it their all. And I love the anime adding this pissed off look from Hao. Like, it's just like, why don't you give up? But then suddenly, and again, the anime did such a fantastic job here, as you hear a voice calling from the distance, that he believes too, that because of Yo he made it this far. It's Manta, riding a train, one of those weird spirit trains we saw traveling through the various levels of the Great Spirit before, that we saw Masamune riding on. It's Manta coming in to help save Yo. I honestly thought this was an amazing entrance by Manta, coming in to help out Yo for one final time. And so everyone joins hands in an attempt to pull away from the black hole. Now, let's jump over to the original anime, where Yo is standing up to Hao one more time, and Hao commands the spirit of fire, who has consumed the energy of the Great Spirit, so they clash once more. Honestly, it's cool to see Yo clashing against Hao, but Hao's just grown too strong for Yo. But Yo doesn't give up. He just keeps striking again and again, as everyone else can only look on. All of Yo's friends and allies. It looks impossible. Like, Hao will win and everything will be destroyed. And Hao's just reveling in the power he's obtained, which, I mean, it's hard to tell how much stronger he's gotten at this point because he was already so utterly powerful, but he's reveling in it because it took 1,000 years. I'm gonna savor this power. But of course, Yo's allies, they haven't lost faith. It'll work out somehow, remember? Even Jean tells him, believe, pray. That's all you can do right now. It's what you have to do. Hao finds Yo to be pretty much just fighting against the inevitable. He strikes, he strikes, he strikes, but to no avail. Hao thinks, this is it. I've managed to overcome everything. But Yo refuses, saying, no, there's still things you aren't able to see. That's why you wanted this power, because nothing is guaranteed. But Hao thinks everything's secured. I have the power of the Great Spirit. There's nothing left to fear. As he squeezes the life out of Yo, and Hao is pissed, because Yo just keeps standing up. Like, Hao is just fed up with everything. So he tries to incinerate Yo completely and utterly. But Yo keeps standing. Again, like, both series, it comes down to willpower. Because, honestly, by this point, Yo should be out of Furyoku. Like, with everything we know from the series, Yo should have long since been out of Furyoku. But the original anime had just kind of not really calculated Furyoku loss to the same extent that the manga did by this point. So Yo just has this boundless well that just does not run dry. But you could also say that's willpower. He wills the power. He believes that he can still fight. And thus he can. And so seeing this, Yo's allies believe in him. They continue to believe. And how they do it is relatively odd. It's hard to say. You know, you could just say that their prayers are with him. Their hearts are with him. Everyone's hearts are with him. Everyone believes. Everyone hopes. Everyone prays. Everyone just has this trust, this faith in Yo, and then the face of overwhelming power, of imminent destruction. Yo is able to awaken something thanks to everyone who came together for him, because of everyone who has come to trust him and everyone who has come to love him. And thus, he finally gets a giant oversoul. Like, original anime was really digging them giant oversouls. I will be honest, I never cared for the outfit Amidamaru gets. I'm sorry. Some of the giant oversouls look so gaudy, especially the original creation ones. They're not terrible. They grow on me after a while, but the anime only giant oversouls like Mix, Basson, Morphine, and even Amidamaru, they just look so gaudy to me. But even Mephisto E and Tokagero's Orochi, even they look kind of gaudy to a certain degree. I don't know, I guess I got spoiled by how classy the armor oversouls ended up looking. But everyone's hopes and wishes come together and give Yo power, which, I mean, the thing about that is the manga had a point where it's just like, yeah, they explained that even if everyone in the shaman fight had come together and lent their power to Yo, it still wouldn't be enough. So I don't know if this would really work that way, all things considered, but it wasn't just shaman fight contestants, it was everyone, Yo's friends, family, allies, spectators in the shaman fight, all their power combined, because they were all watching this. But then Hao also gained the power of the Great Spirit, which also raises some questions about how this would all work out. And Yo is empowered by everyone. And Yo feels like he finally has the power to truly fight back. And at the very least, I do enjoy the fact that it finally feels like Hao has someone who can actually counter him. Like in all versions, Yo does not defeat Hao on his own. He only is able to really stand up to Hao because of everyone else's help. And then there's just this final strike where it seems as though Yo managed to defeat Hao, just utterly destroying him. Then everything fades to white. Cause, I mean, what does it mean to destroy someone who has gained the power of the Great Spirit? And everyone finds themselves outside of the shaman fight location. The ruins disappear, which would have been really weird if we were still in manga continuity where this was a tourist attraction and tourists were all over the place. And Yo just has this vibe of everything worked out. And I mean, Hao's defeated as far as we know in the original anime. Just boom, Yo finished him off thanks to the power of friendship. But the manga and newer anime, it's not that cut and dry, even though it's not dry at all. It's fairly shonen by all extensions of imagination. But with Manta coming in and rescuing everyone, just like in the original anime, Hao is at a loss. How are these people here in the commune of the Shaman King? We also see Ryu is here too, helping out, and Faust as the conductor along with Eliza. And I gotta say, the way Faust and Eliza look, adorable. Just utterly adorable in their conductor outfits. And Faust explains that this is the linking of hearts. That's what binds the train, and it's not easy to undo. It connects them all. And unfortunately, because the newer anime actually cut out some elements, a lot of the ghosts that Yo helped back in Funbari don't appear. There was a whole segment of the manga where Yo was helping out various ghosts around its town that both the original anime and the newer anime completely cut out, but there were a lot of references to suicides and very gruesome deaths, and a lot of those things don't really come into play majorly until now. So, I mean, I guess it's fine if it was cut out, but it's really kind of unfortunate that the newer anime cut all that out. Like, that was kind of the first sign for me that the newer anime wasn't really going to play ball with a lot of things that the original anime also left out. But there's still people who matter to Yo on the train, specifically his close family and Tamao, the entire Asakura family. And I love, Yome? Saying, I mean, you killed us, Hao. You're the one who allowed us to be here because of the linking of our hearts and our connection to the Great Spirit. They cut down some of Mikihisa's dialogue where he says, his family is a powerful thing. How? It's not too late. You can call me Dad if you want. I love that. Mikihisa always want to be a proud papa. I kind of like the way that Ren's dad phrases things in the manga a little bit more, where he's just like, what a horrible thing you've done, boy. It takes a mighty deed to give us pause, where it's just like, you really pulled some fucked up shit to actually make even the Tao family go, wow, that's pretty messed up. But ultimately, he's just proud of how strong Ren has become. Even June is crying a little bit. And Ren is embarrassed. Parika is here as well. And then we see Horohoro's dad, and even the bear Apollo. You see Chocolo's master Oleon is there, as well as Chocolo's gang Shaft, at the very least wanting to have his back, as well as Chocolo's parents, who he hasn't seen since he was a child. And Chocolo's parents explain that all these people were tracked to their communes thanks to one person, a specific detective, none other than Lyserg's dad, along with his mom, who are happy to see him, and how's just pissed because he's just like, oh god, the 5 warriors and their families I need to deal with? Alright, fine. I will crush you all as one big happy family. And I won't lie, I was so happy to see Lily Rara. And they explain everything a little bit better in the manga, though, as Lily Rara explains that Hao can't really overcome the power that is actually emanating from them for one reason. All their souls are overflowing with something specific. And it's Team Mariachi who's in the back next to Team Iceman, who explain that it comes from love. Their souls are surging with love, which is something that has been kind of highlighted towards the end of the series, that the strong emotion of love can also be a great power. Again, yes, it's cheesy, but I mean, this series established that feelings and emotions could dictate power very early on. And Team Iceman come in and it's just like, oh no, the kid's just being stubborn. But then the Egyptian team explained that, caring for someone you love can give you strength. A great love can last an eternity. And you can see Anatel and Anahol reunited and emanating with the power of love for each other. And how it's just getting pissed because it's just like, no, this is my room, get out. And in come the super fast X-Laws. They completely cut out the joke of Marco, adjusting his glasses so hard they break, which is such a missed opportunity. But all the X-Laws come riding in next to the train and unleashing their angels to help hold the train in place so that it won't be sucked into the black hole. And with that much power behind it, they're not getting sucked in. And they have their final member, also boosted by the power of love, Reinhardt, as he sends out his Azazel. The freshly engaged Reinhardt is ready to send out a barrage of love straight at Hao, firing the Maiden Missile, which I hate that they doesn't call it that in the anime. It's the Maiden Missile, damn it. And Jean comes out still praying for love. In all versions, she's still praying up a storm. But here, she's willing to unleash the greatest power, the power of love, sent right at Hao, bringing out Oversoul God Hug. The greatest hug of them all. You will feel the love tonight. But in comes none other than Lakiste, wanting nobody's soul to be consumed by the black hole. Hao thinks that maybe Lakiste has come to betray him, but Lakiste says, you cannot destroy me because I am currently stronger than you. He says that mostly because, well, he is filled with love, and Hao has been shaken so much and he's filled with so much hate. But Lakiste asks that everyone be returned to the earth, but Hao just grows angrier. But it's not just Lakiste, it's all the minions of Hao. They hate that Hao has become so unhappy because of all the invaders. And some of them feel that, they were needed to try to convince Hao that he needs to undo all of this. Now, some of the dialogue is all pretty much given to Shang. Some of the dialogue that Turban had about wanting to stay behind with Hao, understanding his pain, and even Vlad's comment about, hey, didn't you want to found a shaman kingdom on Earth? With some of the strength that some of your other followers have gained, can't you trust them to carry out your plans? But the majority of them just want to be with Hao, if that's what he wants. And especially Opacha. The adorable Opacha just wants to be with Hao no matter what, even if it means becoming a star. And so Opacha flings themselves into the black hole. And Hao actually shows concern and dispels the black hole. There's also a cutout of some of the other people present, like the witches that Team Hanagumi killed, coming out and being like, oh, so you're saving us, Hao? We all want to come back to life. Maybe make us a little bit younger. And Hao's just like, who said anything about bringing people back to life? And you have some of the other shaman fight contestants who are just like, damn it, lady, we were starting to win them over. But enter Lady Sati saying, this train is like the silken thread of a spider web. She's basically saying, you're stuck in it, bro. It's something you cannot just shake off easily. And I honestly just love Sati because there was a little bit of shade that Hiroyuki had kind of put between them in the manga, especially in the side chapters, that I really wish could have gotten adapted into the anime, because it just shows a little bit more personality between the two of them. Hao just has this great deal of contempt for Sati because honestly Sati is like the closest thing to Hao's level. And Sati just throwing shade is just like, you've ascended to finally gained the crown, and yet you have such a displeased face. And Hao's just like, I mean, of course I'm upset. I have so many trespassers here. But Sati claps back and says, oh, you didn't want any of this? Are you sure? Weren't you secretly hoping that someone could help you find someone you kept coming back to the Great Spirit time and time again to look for? Those answers you can find in life or death. And here comes the one thing that really should have been adapted into the anime. Like, I know there were certain things that could not be adapted, but a special episode, a side story, an OVA should have been released to explain this for the anime. Because, you know, the rest of that side stuff, it's flavor. It's adds on to some of the plots, helps fill in some holes. Not all of them. There's plenty of plot holes still in the story, but this is the biggest one. And I feel like it's better explained in the manga because this mysterious person explains that, you know, despite the fact that Hao became God, there were still souls he could not find, he couldn't bring to him. Even as the Shaman King, there are still souls he just couldn't access for one reason or another. And thus, Ochayo appears before Hao. And aside from a brief flash that Yo had seen previously, no one knows who this character is. Nobody watching the anime knows who this character is. Why does he call Hao Mappadoji, which is essentially just a pun on Hao's actual name from back when he was first alive, his first life go around? Like, this is such a massive hole because no one simply just watching the anime knows who this is, what the relevance of this character is to Hao. We know that it was a friend, but aside from that, what is it? Who is this? Why is he relevant? Like that. I'm sorry, this was a blunder by the anime, because this is something that really needed to be included to really show why Hao has a special feeling towards this character, because it's a tragic story that showed the first embers of Hao's, you know, growing obsession, and that it was a terrible mistake. It really was. And then Hao has this reaction where he's just like, I've been looking for you for years. And Hachio explains, hey, I've been with your mom. Same commune as her. You've been searching it out for a millennium, but you just couldn't make it there. And, I mean, you can kind of understand off the bat why Hao would never be able to go to a peaceful commune for those who were able to just accept their deaths and their lives. And Hao is just in disbelief. It's just like, he believes that his mother's spirit was completely destroyed. And again, backstory that you really need. Like, during that moment when the X-Laws raided Hao's base and Hao had that single tear, that was the perfect moment to tell Hao's backstory in full. Such a missed opportunity because it gives so much clarification to Hao's nature. Hao believes that his mother's spirit was destroyed, that she was completely annihilated. The fact that he wasn't able to find her just grew his resentment over the years. Like, of course he was never able to find peace because he was never able to just find his own mother, but that's because his hatred just blinded him to her presence. And I love how the various different spirits start to appear, explaining it's just like, yeah, your hatred, your rage, it created this divide that your mother could not cross. And they completely cut out the moment where, Yo and Ren are just like, Basan, Amidamaru, where were you? And Amidamaru apologizes, and Basana explains, there were certain reasons that prevented us from getting here. And then you have the appearance of Kororo, Tokugero, Morphine, Pylon, explain that certain souls have different wavelengths that allow you to connect with other people. It is through these wavelengths that you're able to form bonds. When people aren't on the same wavelength, they can miss each other entirely. It's how a lonely person could be in a room full of people and still feel lonely. You're not on the same wavelength as the people around you. And Master Ava appears with Mick and says, to a certain degree, it was Hao's own power that made it impossible for him to find his mother. Like, he literally lost that ability because he gained so much power. His power was born of rage, sorrow, and hatred, something that Yo has mentioned before, and that made it impossible for him to actually feel the love his mother emanated towards him. His mother's love was unconditional despite everything that he'd done. And Hao interrupts them and says, okay, but was this train Matamune's creation? Which is unfortunate. This would have been the perfect time for Masamune to appear, if I'm being honest, because it was something that Yo was seeking out as well. That's why Yo wanted to become the Shaman King. And Anna appears and says, yeah, Matamune's not coming, which is really unfortunate to me. But Anna, because of the past, she said she's taking possession of the golem. The Munzer family has been conscripted into her service, having them run around within the Great Spirit, finding people as well. Unfortunately, they completely cut out Camel Munzer, saying that, hey, Redsub, don't be too harsh on Anna. It's all thanks to her that we have all these souls who have created this much of a positive wavelength that can kind of strike back against Hao's negative wavelength. And thus she appears, the beautiful Anna, who had actually borrowed everyone else's spirit allies in order to help them kind of fight their way through any obstacles in order to make it through all the communes that they needed to. Get the people who were in the worst communes where they needed to get them. And it's an unfortunate moment where Yo's line of being like, what do you mean Matamune's not coming, is completely cut out, because it's just like, Yo should be like the first one being like, what do you mean Matamune's not coming? And how he's just deeply confused by all of this, and Anna rubs it in his face. It's just like, oh, can't you read minds? Why do you need an explanation? And Anna reveals that for the first time in 1,000 years, Hao can't read anyone's mind. And Ochias explains that because Hao is surrounded by, nothing but positive wavelengths and vibes, there's no need for him to be on guard like he used to in the past. There's no need for him to look out for danger. Again, this is why Hao's backstory in the fullest detail is really kind of needed, because Hao grew up in a time of death, strife, fear, needing to worry about what was around every corner. He needed to be on guard. But because none of the people here, none of the spirits here, can do him any harm or even want to do him any harm, because, hell, they're with all of their loved ones. It's the most positive place to be at this moment. There's nothing for Hao to fear. So Hao, in a certain sense, has regressed to a state from when he was much younger. Also, Chocolove got hit by a meteorite because he was making fun of How. Another detail that's been lost, and how freaks out. It's just like, how dare you? Who told you you could do this? But Anna explains it's like, well, I mean, hey, shouldn't you be thanking us? You've been freed from all of that rage and sorrow and strife. This is a positive space. Essentially, Yo has done to him the same thing he did to her. Injected so much positivity that there could be no resentment. I also love how in the back, and it's not addressed at all, you could actually see some of Gandahara's spirits, especially the Wisdom King's spirits, and some of the spirits from Funbari Hill. The Chimichimi Morio, the Koropokoro, just all these various different spirits are here. And Anna explains it's just like, you are in the presence of love. And surrounded by all that overwhelming love, your spirit filled with hatred has given in to something that it's honestly wanted for a long time, a form of acceptance. And I'm always kind of torn on the way Yo says this in all versions, where he says, that's why it's so hard for Masamune to show his face, that he can't show up because his blade isn't to be raised against How anymore. But it's just like, this is something that Masamune wanted, for How to finally be freed from that hatred, to see that there was another way, that How didn't have to just be killed, to be defeated, to be sealed away, that How could kind of rest in peace to a certain degree. But for the most part, Yo is content that How can finally see his mother again. And thus, we see Mosuke, Yoken, the Ooni. They've brought us very special someone. And thus How is reunited with his mother. Also, one of the things that was left out, and I actually thought towards the end of the anime, okay, a bit of a spoiler here, but I mean, you should already know this by now. There are 3 mortuary tablets, tablets for prayer in the house of the Asakura family and the Funbari Hot Spring. I thought one of them is Mikihisa's because he kind of got run over by a car later on. And the 2 others I thought were because Yo's grandparents had died. I didn't realize that one of the other 2 was for the spirit who's been in the Funbari Hot Spring house for a good long while, but never really got addressed too much in the newer anime. And the other was for Faust, for Faust's soul. Yeah. The explanation for the 3 mortuary tablets, Tamagero, the old man who died in a fire, you used to own the Flame Inn where the Funbari Hot Springs is located. You don't really need too much information on the old guy. The one is Faust, who apparently died from overwork. Yeah, he was resurrected, actually. And here's the explanation. It's rumored that following his performance in the legendary war, Faust VIII found the prospect of revival just a bit too labor-intensive. There were those who brought him back against his will, but they eventually relented, citing Faust's own lack of motivation. Evidently, he proclaimed that he had no unfinished business as he returned to the Great Spirit. All he wants in the afterlife is to spend his days with Eliza. So essentially, Faust just didn't care to live. Like, people would bring him back and he'd just end up working himself to death. And he had no real motivation to keep living on because it's just like, well, I could just be with Eliza in the afterlife. What's the point of living? And then Mikihisa, who died in a traffic accident, mysteriously. Yeah, it says, some say that after the legendary war, Mickey was involved in a hit-and-run accident on his way home from the pachinko parlor, leading to his tragic demise. His mask was found on the eve of a house some 330 feet from the site of impact, and among his pachinko winnings was a wristwatch he planned to give to Tamao. No one knows why he wore the mask, why he wasn't there for Yo, how he felt about How, or why during the shaman fight where he showed the world he loved his children and was probably a wonderful father in his own right, he wasn't allowed to return to life. All we know for sure is that his wife, Keiko-san, was very angry with him. Word says Miki failed to reach Nirvana. At present, his ghost whereabouts are unknown. It is presumed one could summon him if they were so inclined, but so far no one has been so inclined. It's the weirdest thing for Mikihisa. He just disappears. He dies and then he disappears and he never shows up again. His spirit's just gone. I always wonder if maybe the sequel series explains it, or maybe it was the machination of How, because I haven't read that far into any of the sequel series, but it's just such a weird thing to have just happened offhandedly. And when you get to the end of the newer anime, you see that Miki's dead and it's just like, what happened? Yeah, your guess is as good as the manga readers. At least in the manga you get an explanation, but it's not much of an explanation, dude. Now, let's finish things off with the original anime first. So after the events of the shaman fight, everyone departs from Lyserg because, well, he comes from America for the most part, and he's kind of got his own path to travel. And then Lyserg gets picked up by the Lilies, which isn't a bad little pairing. And Jean and Marco see him off. Meanwhile, with the Patch, they're kind of at a loss because it's just like, well, we just gotta wait for the Great Spirit to commune with us again, and the shaman fight is essentially suspended because it got interrupted like halfway through. I love that they get a ride from Billy, and life picks up like business as usual. Yo's still cooking for Anna, doing most of the chores himself. It's actually entertaining because it's just like, after all that time away, it's just back to business as usual. Apparently it's been months. You see that Faust and, I guess, maybe a now alive Liza? Or maybe she's still dead? It's really hard to tell. I have to assume she's still dead because they never learned resurrection in this series, but she's now wearing a different outfit, which I didn't think spirits could do outside of being in the Great Spirit, which was also not a thing that happened in this series. So, I mean, well, Faust and Eliza tend the Funbari Hot Springs. You know, Faust was true to his word, so he didn't just die in this series. And Manta's just wondering if everything he saw in the shaman fight was real. And Manta chalks it up to, you know, everything we went through was basically us being messed with by the Great Spirit. God just fucking around again. Meanwhile, Ryu, instead of going back to his gang, is just out on the open road. Meanwhile, Horohoro is still planting them fields. Well, he's trying to plant those Butterbur fields and doing a really crappy job at it. Meanwhile, Chocolove's just out working a day job in New York. Meanwhile, he's actually managing to at least get a few people here and there to his comedy skits. Although he's actually starting to find he can't come up with as many jokes as he would like. Lyserg's studying, probably to become a detective in the future. And Ren, oh, Ren's on a delivery mission. A little something special from his sister to the Asakuras, the Tao family. Why this had to be in person, even Ren's skeptical about. And Basan calls about that he's actually looking forward to hanging out with everyone. Meanwhile, Yo and Manta hanging out at the old hideout. Yo invites Manta over to dinner, and he'll meet him after cram school. Manta still wonders what the Great Spirit's idea actually was. Everything's left a little bit cryptic about how things went towards the end. Maybe that was for the best to a certain degree. You know, the Great Spirit is given more of a will of its own in the original anime, more of a personality, whereas in the manga and newer anime, the Great Spirit is just a thing that exists. It is the sum total of all life, and that's about it. And Manta even wonders, did the Great Spirit just allow Yo to be able to make it to the Holy Land? Did Hao really obtain the Great Spirit? And what happened to Hao? Did he die? Is he alive out there? Yo arrives home and sees that Ren is already there, and also finds that Anna actually decided to cook for the first time. Faust is just happy hanging out with Eliza. Manta going to cram school as usual. Ryu decided to go and visit Horohoro and Perika. Amidamaru, Mosuke, and Bason hanging out, getting drunk. Lyserg studying hard, Chocolove trying his out several different acts on the streets of New York, Tamao being perved on, Mikihisa doing his aesthetic stuff, Yo's grandparents being themselves. We see Opacho just living out there, and everyone sees a little something special, a shooting star. I'm not exactly sure what Marco and Jean ended up doing after the whole Shaman event, especially since Jean lost Shamish in this universe. The Lilies started up a flower shop, and Caleb and Silva still selling their wares out on the streets. Team Iceman tending to a farm, Tao family doing their usual thing, and I swear I wish I knew what Ren and Yo were talking about. Something to do with Anna and her cooking up a storm. Like, it's a lot of food. And then the Oracle Bell goes off, signaling that the Shaman fight has started anew. It's a pretty nice ending, all things considered. A very nebulous. It leaves a lot to your imagination, which is why I think so many people actually enjoy it. Now, something that the manga does that the anime kind of spoils is that Yo and Anna have a son. And if you've read the manga, you know exactly when they had a son. But the manga had this special series of chapters, especially in the original release. There was a bit of an epilogue where you pick up with Yo and Anna's son. It's 2007, and you see a young Hana Asakura traveling with Ryu. It's 7 years since the end of the Shaman fight, and Hana is 6 years old. Consider that what you will. And Hana talks about his very brutal mom, who's always on his case to get onto a good school. And business at Funbari Hot Springs has not been going well. So his mom is very scary. We also pick up with Hana and Ryu off in the United States now, having been sent to a prison to get a special someone, to pick up one of the legendary warriors from the fight against Hao. And we find out that Chocolove, he allowed himself to go to jail so he could pay for his crime. And he's been in prison for 6 whole years. And he still has 10 years left to serve, so a 16-year sentence. Usually for something like this you would get around like 25 years, but probably because he came forward after a certain point they lessened it to about 16, which is fairly generous, especially for a minor who intentionally murdered someone. And since, Chocolove can't be released, we see that Hana has the antiquity and is ready to do whatever it takes to get him out of jail. We then cut to Ryu having been arrested because the attempt to break him out was against the law. And Ryu tells Hana, hey, I'll take care of it, kid. Just don't get into any trouble. So Hana's just out on the streets, roaming around. And then he's accosted by some tourists who think he's a local. And Hana, since they're talking in English and Hana mostly just knows Japanese, is just like, are they trying to mug me? And so Hana goes on the offensive and promptly gets arrested. Somehow they end up getting out and traveling to China. Ryu gave Chocolove the message about what they need to do, and now they're trying to contact someone who's a bit of a recluse. And Hana wonders, it's just like, you've been working for my mom for years, Ryu. How do you manage? And Ryu says that he's doing it because Hana's mom is working so hard lately, he wants to do his part. However, we end up finding out that the person that Hana calls mom is none other than Tamao, which raises a lot of questions at the time that this came out. But, next chapter we find out that Tamao had actually just been lying to Hana, that there's some secret about his parents, and that apparently Tamao wants to be an enka singer, much like Anna's favorite singer. And then we see previews of everyone in their older looks, which ended up not being solidified at the time, which is probably good. You see, apparently the original concept was that Ren became a recluse. Chocolove managed to get out of jail and is on an airplane. Lyserg is in full detective gear and is ready to head out. Horo out working the fields. Completely different hairstyle than what he ends up with. And he's called to by the person I can only assume is Parika. And then we finally see Yo and Anna walking home, having traveled the world. And so we now pick up in chapter 300 of Volume 35, The Final Reincarnation, The Last Word. And all that preamble was to kind of get you used to Hana Asakura and his whole situation that kind of got skipped over to a certain degree. But the volume opens with this, so, the newer anime sticking with stuff that only comes from the primary chapters of the manga. Hana's getting a little bit impatient, and we see how rough Hana can be, just like his mother. All the legendary warriors are finally gathering on the appointed day. Hana's getting nervous because of how much Ryu has built them up, and also Hana's parents are finally returning, and Hana's a little bit peeved. And that's why I went over all that stuff that isn't included in this episode. Hana's apprehension and feelings towards meeting his parents is a little mixed because he didn't even know he wasn't even living with his parents this entire time. They had actually been out traveling trying to change certain aspects of the world, essentially. And then Hana is met by Horo just out of the blue and gets a punch to the face because of it, and thus arrives Lyserg and Chocolove. Honestly, I love the reworked designs because the ones that Hiroyuki originally went with, they were no good. No good. We also end up finding out, and that's only in the manga, that Pirika apparently got herself a boyfriend who she's completely obsessed with. Chocolove managed to get out of jail, thankfully, on good behavior, and because, Lyserg is a respectable member of law enforcement, I can't imagine what he would need to do in order to get a convicted murderer out, but it was probably a plea because, Chocolove did what he did when he was fairly young. And Hana is starstruck, again, because of everything Ryu told him. And then a horse-drawn carriage shows up, and then it's a baby. And Ren complaining about Tokyo. They completely cut off the joke that Ren was trying to make it seem like, because Ren's son is the spitting image of him, and he thought by having his son come out first, they would have like a big reaction like, oh my god, Ren shrunk! But they're still a bit taken aback. They didn't even know that he had a child. I love Chocolove thinking, you trying to one up? Yo, is that what it is? And Horo asks the $1 million question who the mother is. It's also cut out that Hana knows of Ren specifically because Yo apparently used to talk about him a lot. Closer friends than you would think. Also get a little bit of Lyserg being like, it's pretty obvious who the mother of men is. You look at the hair and the eyes. The manga is a little bit more subtle about it, but the anime just gives it away. It's just like, it's Iron Maiden Jean! Just so you're not confused. Also, if you didn't notice, men just called Horo a dummy, an idiot, called him a baka. But Ren is more concerned with the fact that Yo hasn't shown up. Apparently they got lost at the airport. Ryu's gonna go get him. And this is the first time that Lyserg and Chocolove have actually been to Funbari. It's a peaceful place, but only because of what they did. And they eventually explained to Hana exactly what happened during the final battle against Hao. Hao was reunited with his mother, and Lyserg comments about the fact that she's the spitting image of Anna, or vice versa. And she's very polite and very sweet, greets everyone, and personally apologizes for the actions of her son. And of course, Hao is just like, what are you doing in front of the entire world? And I love his mom's comment, it's precisely because we're in front of the entire world we should apologize for everything you've done. I love the look everyone has on their face, just seeing Hao get scolded, but Hao's still angry because it's just like, how can you forgive and apologize to them? It was humans who murdered you. But she slaps Hao a good one because of he's been a bad boy. And essentially what she says, and I feel like it's better explained in the manga, she tells Hao to outgrow this hatred, that there will only be hope for him once he admit that the hatred he has for others is hatred he also has towards himself. That she is not a weak human being. Yes, her death was very tragic, but she also came to peace with her death. I mean, it's been 1,000 years after all. To feel and to understand your feelings is to be human. And if he is to be a king, he must learn to love people. And they cut out Yo's line of, well, if Hao can't read minds anymore, then I guess the job is done. And just as a little bit of a treat, Yo does the same smile in every version after he feels that Hao has been essentially defeated, dealt with. So it just, again, there's still that comparison. And while everyone thinks, okay, we won, Hao does not accept this. Especially because it's just like, you guys could live in paradise, never to suffer the world. Why would you want to go back? And while Yo's just like, okay, so you're gonna release us? Hao makes one thing very clear. His want to purge the earth of humanity still exists. He just wants to see what Yo and the others will do to change his mind in the future. Although he's taking the patch with him. Although Lip and Rap will be returned to their lives. He also holds over Yo's head, I'm the Shaman King. Don't address me as your equal. And Yo accepts this, and thus 7 years have passed, and the unfortunate thing that everyone has learned is that, even as adults, they're powerless. The world is too large to change, and it comes to a point where they even kind of realize humanity's going to destroy themselves. Hao doesn't even need to do anything. But despite all this, Yo says, we'll figure something out. That they made a promise, and Hana gets to see his dad and mom for the first time as far as he can remember. And like I said before, they were basically on a trip to see if they can maybe change some aspects of the world at large, but it took a little longer than they would have hoped. And Hana punishes them for their transactions, specifically Yo. And again, Mikihisa dead and all that. Tamao complaining. It's just like, you should go be with your parent. But Hana is very abstinent. Ryu is a sushi chef at the Funbari Hot Springs. Even the manga doesn't actually go into the fact that Team Hanagumi became waitresses at Funbari, but Anna said she was going to do it, gonna make them become that, and that's what happened. They've grown, but some things never change. And Manta, well, he's trying his best to see how shamanism can help the world at large, though he's barely grown. Everyone is essentially doing their best to find an answer for the future. That's all they can really do. And you see on a familiar sight, Hao Asakura, with a very vacant look in his eyes, looking upon man's destruction and encroachment on the world with cold dead eyes, but one thing gives his eyes a light of hope. A certain cat spirit who seems to be hanging around him. The end. So the ending to the manga and newer anime is also kind of ambiguous. To a certain degree, Hao still won, gained the power of the Great Spirit, but now it's a question of, hey, will he be a good king or a bad king? It's more of an almost concrete conclusion to the fight, but you know that Hao isn't quite done just yet. There's even a little bit of a follow-up in the manga. Everyone partying their butts up, although they're also at a bit of a loss as to what to do for the future. It's just like, what other direction should we go in? This is a bonus track titled Legs on a Snake. As in comes Anna, questioning why they're just moping around. The fight's still not done. The next shaman fight is only 500 years away. But whereas Yo thinks that she's joking, no, Anna is very serious about this. Apparently somehow, and it becomes a running gag through a lot of the bonus chapters, that the patch, despite the fact that they're still all within the Great Spirit, keeps sending the shaman fight contestants pamphlets and tablets with all this information on it about what happened during the shaman fight in Tokyo 2000. And that's where a lot of the bonus information from the manga comes from that I think really should have been in the anime to help elaborate on things, but it is what it is. Lyserg hypothesizes that Lip and Rap, who are Shrine Maidens, are in contact with the Great Spirit, and the Patch are able to send things through them. And there's all this information on everyone who participated in this previous shaman fight 7 years ago. And Anna wants to use this as something to be studied so that their descendants can be ready for the next shaman fight, reminding Yo of his promise to make her the shaman queen. And Mana just is like, well, some things never change. There's a little bit of a joke about his height in there as well. And that's the end, because everything past here is all Shaman King flower stuff in this version of the manga. So 300 chapters of manga, 64 episodes of the original anime, 52 episodes of the newer anime, and we finally reached our conclusion. If you've made it this far through the video, I want to thank you so much. I know if you've watched this whole thing, it was a bit of a chore, but there was so much content to go over. There were various ups, downs, left, rights, and avenues. Each ending has its own kind of sense of finality, with the original anime having one where the shaman fight is going to start anew, the newer anime having a ending where our heroes are still trying to carve out their own future and find their own answers, and the manga, whose last little bit of content is already blossoming into the future with the life of Hana Asakura and what he'll be dealing with in the future. So again, I want to thank you so much for sticking with me throughout this entire series. If you have, this has been a fun and interesting ride, but I'm also kind of glad that it's finally done. There were many times that I didn't think I would make it all the way through, but this was something that was a passion for me, and there were people who did enjoy it nonetheless, so this is definitely for them as well. But tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think? Which is your favorite ending? Do you wish the original had continued on in its own way, or are you happy with the ending that it got? Are you looking forward to the continued adventures of Hana Asakura and what machinations a Shaman King How has for the world that continues to spiral towards chaos? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you again for watching, especially if you've made it all the way here from the first What's the Difference. I'm so grateful. This was a fun ride. But until the next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I'll see you in the next video. Till then, bye-bye.